A single dad rents a room. But what secret is the college girl hiding from him? Before we dive in, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Type your city in the comments so we can see just how far this story reaches. And when we get to the end, I dare you to rate it from 0 to 10, because this one might just break your heart. Now, enjoy the story. A torn piece of paper fluttered in the wind, pinned to the old notice board on the edge of Willow Street College. Room for rent. Quiet neighborhood. Affordable. Most students walked by with a smirk. Only the desperate would live there. But Rachel Morgan stopped. Her eyes lingered on every faded word, as if the ink itself was whispering a secret meant only for her. Why would the daughter of a millionaire raised in silks and luxury pause in front of this ragged paper as though her entire life was about to change? Few would guess. That little slip of paper would tie together the fate of a grieving single father, a little girl aching for love, and a runaway heiress desperate to escape her golden cage. Three broken hearts about to collide in a story that would change everything. One late autumn afternoon, Rachel Morgan, 22 years old, only daughter of a real estate empire worth billions, stood silently before a weathered wooden house at the far end of Willow Street. A small suitcase rested by her feet. Her brown hair danced softly in the wind as she knocked 3 times on the dark wooden door. The creak of floorboards sounded from within, as if the house itself was warning her that a turning point was about to begin. The door opened. There stood Adam Carter, 38, widowed, once a senior executive, but now surviving on long shifts as a repairman. His face was etched with exhaustion. His eyes, part steel, part sorrow, carried the weight of battles no one else could see. In that pause of silence, a small voice rang out. "Daddy, who is it?" A little girl, no more than 6, peeked from behind the doorframe. Her wide, shining eyes, an innocent smile cut through the heaviness of the moment. This was Emma, the brightest light in that tired old house, and the only reason Adam kept fighting each day. And right there, Rachel's hesitant gaze met Emma's pure smile. For just a heartbeat, you could almost feel destiny brushing against their lives. 3 strangers colliding in one fragile instant at the doorway of a story that would alter them forever. If you were Rachel, would you have the courage to step inside that house where heavy shadows of the past and fragile hopes of tomorrow were waiting side by side? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Chapter 1. The Simple Room. The little attic sat at the end of a narrow hallway, its white painted door peeling at the edges like the lip of an old letter. Rachel set down her suitcase, her hand tightening around the handle before she let out a quiet breath. The room was just big enough for an iron bed, a low wooden desk, and a slanted window facing Willow Street, where maple leaves were falling like a slow rain. The smell of old wood and the late afternoon light slanting through the glass cast a strange, gentle silence. The bed springs hummed whenever she stepped, a timid little song of thrift. The room isn't big, but the window's lovely in the morning. Adam's voice floated up from the stairs, half apologetic, half cautious. "If you need an extra blanket, just call me. I'm okay. Thank you." Rachel answered, her voice softening as if she had just slipped an invisible ring off her finger. Her phone buzzed. The screen lit Mother. Beneath it, a chain of messages from the family assistant The press is asking. The penthouse has been reset. The project launch is tonight. Rachel stared for a long moment, then switched the sound off. In that breath of quiet, the breeze outside the window seemed to take her side. You're allowed to be yourself. She drew the curtain. A fine powder of dust shimmered up. On the desk lay a handwritten note in a man's print. Sorry about the creaky floor. I'll fix it soon. A. The simple line warmed her chest. In her old world, everything was replaced, and no one said sorry. They gave orders. She ran a fingertip along the desk's rough edge, and that rasp pulled her away from velvet carpets into another kind of real. Knock, knock. A tiny voice. Emma peeked in, hugging a little silver tin. I brought you glow-in-the-dark stars. I stick them on my ceiling too. At night, they won't let you be scared? Rachel stifled a laugh. Tears pricked her eyes. I'm not sure I'm afraid of the dark, but I do get scared of noise. It's noisy here because the floor squeaks, Emma said, with solemn wisdom. But the floor only squeaks when it's happy. All three of them laughed short and light like a breath. Adam paused in the doorway as if he'd just noticed a fragile scrap of peace drifting in. I'll let you two stick the stars, he murmured, and stepped away. Rachel climbed onto the edge of the bed, and with Emma pressed one tiny star after another onto the slanted ceiling. The cool tack touched her fingertips. Each star that held to the wood steadied her heartbeat. When the warm bulb clicked with a soft snap and the room went dark, their own small sky bloomed little points of light, not glaring just enough to see each other's faces. Where's your home? Emma asked, as if asking for a secret. Rachel looked toward the window. Outside, Willow Street moved slow. A dog tugged a mailman through a spill of sunlight. She swallowed and smiled. Right now, it's here. The peak of feeling arrived in quiet. For the first time in years, that answer didn't frighten her. In the cramped space between a happy floor and a plastic star sky, Rachel realized the luxury was gone. But she suddenly had a place to breathe, to smile, to be herself. At the end of the street, in a simple room, fate shifted on a long exhale and a small tin of glow stars brought by a little girl. The clock in the Carter's kitchen tapped out 6 soft beats, announcing evening. The smell of chicken soup drifted through the small kitchen, steam fogging the window glass. Rachel came down the stairs, smoothing the hem of a plain sweater she never would have imagined wearing. The floorboards creaked under her step, but the sound felt less foreign now. Adam was ladling soup with an old nicked-handle ladle. He glanced at Rachel and gave a nod in place of an invitation. Emma, perched on a tall chair, waved hard. Miss Rachel, there's a seat for you right here. Rachel smiled and pulled out the chair. A tremor moved through her chest. Her dinners had usually been in a dining room 10 times larger than this entire house, with crystal chandeliers and a small army of staff. Here, there were 3 chipped porcelain bowls, 3 spoons, and the expectant eyes of a little girl. Say grace, Emma Adams said softly. Emma folded her hands and shut her eyes. Dear God, thank you for dinner. Thank you for Daddy, and thank you that Miss Rachel is eating with us. Rachel stilled. Heat from the soup rose to her eyes and blurred her sight. All this time she had thought of herself as a passerby in someone else's life. Yet in that innocent prayer, her name had been set beside the word family. She bent, lifted a spoonful. Chicken, onion, and celery stung her nose in the best way. It's delicious, she whispered. Emma giggled, dimples deepening. Daddy made it. I only put the carrots. Adam gave a shy half smile, a little flustered. I'm no great cook, but I can make one decent thing. Rachel looked at him, her gaze gentling. Sometimes, decent matters more than fancy. Silence settled for a beat. Only the ladle tapping a bowl and the wind slipping through the curtain. In that hush, all three felt something strange. Their simple nearness warmed the old kitchen better than any chandelier could. Emma tilted her head, curious. Miss Rachel, was your old house big? The question nicked a tender memory. Rachel swallowed. Her eyes flickered. It was big. But big doesn't always mean warm. Adam paused, set down the ladle. He didn't ask more, but a quiet understanding touched his eyes. Between them lay an invisible gap loss on one side, leaving on the other, and it was being filled by a little girl happily rescuing carrots from her soup. The moment crested when Rachel watched Emma laugh at a carrot stuck to her spoon. The sound tore the weight in Rachel's chest clean open. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like a runaway heiress, just a woman finding the warmth of home in a modest room. Night fell slowly over Willow Street. Outside, the streetlights cast pale gold on dry maple leaves, scuttling along the curb. In the wooden house, the stove had cooled, dishes were washed and stacked. Emma slept in her room, breath-even arms snug around a worn teddy bear. Rachel turned on the attic bed. The glow stars Emma had stuck to the ceiling twinkled, making her want to laugh and ache at once. She hadn't felt this safe in a long time, and that safety hurt a little because she knew she was just a tenant, and warmth can vanish without warning. A gentle knock at the door. Knock, knock. Are you asleep? Adam's voice soft and unsure. Rachel pulled on her sweater and opened the door. He stood there with 2 mugs of steaming tea, the vapor rising in little clouds. Do you, ever drink tea late? He asked, awkward, setting 1 mug on the table. Rachel let out a small laugh. I'm used to wine and crystal. But tonight, tea sounds right. They sat on the edge of the bed. The breeze slipped through the window and made the tiny flame under the kettle waver. The quiet grew so deep, Rachel could hear her own heartbeat. You used to be a senior manager, didn't you? She asked, eyes tracing the rim of her mug. Adam stilled a small furrow gathering between his brows. You already knew. I see how you run the house, every little detail in order. It doesn't feel like a regular repairman. He set the mug down, rubbing his forehead without thinking. Yeah, I was an operations director. But after my wife passed, I couldn't hold that rhythm. The meetings, the numbers, it all went hollow. I just wanted to be with Emma. So I left it behind. Rachel stayed quiet. Something in his eyes was familiar. The emptiness, the need to hang on to the one thing left. It mirrored the loneliness that had driven her out of her parents' mansion. And you, Adam, looked up. The girl with eyes like she's hiding a whole story. Rachel pressed her lips together. Her breath fluttered. Images flashed lavish parties, cold handshakes, contracts where her name was just a tool to sharpen power. I ran too, she whispered. From a house so big, there was no room for laughter. From a rich family with no room for love. Adam watched her for a long, long moment. The distance between landlord and lodger thinned into something else, 2 souls recognizing themselves in each other. The crest broke, when Rachel suddenly cried. Not with harsh sobs, just one quiet hot tear slipping down her cheek. Adam said nothing, only held out a rough gray handkerchief. "Thank you," she managed, smiling through the tremor. "Sometimes we don't need anything grand to begin again," he said. "Just an old house and someone willing to listen." T's clean warmth night air's cool hand, and two strangers sitting in the dark, each carrying their own wounds, each touching a small thread of hope. Morning poured through the slanted window, sketching bands of gold across the old wooden floor. Rachel opened her eyes. A scatter of messy hair fell over the pillow. The attic still held the smell of wood. The glow stars had faded. No high heels, no relentless phone ringing in a glossy apartment, only sparrows chattering on the street, and a little giggle rising from the kitchen. She slipped on a light cardigan and went downstairs. The sight stopped her for a beat. Adam bent over breakfast, clumsy with a bread knife. Emma beside him, in an apron, far too big face, dusted with flour. "Miss Rachel's awake?" Emma squealed, tugging her toward the table. "We made pancakes, but they're kind of crooked." On the plate, pancakes were charred on one side and pale on the other. Rachel laughed, hand over her mouth. "They look very creative." Adam flushed and scratched his head. "We don't have a private chef like you used to, but at least they're edible." She cut a careful wedge and tasted it. Sweet batter, a hint of scorch, and somehow it warmed her chest. "Good. Really." Emma beamed, eyes shining. "I added love." "Can you taste it?" Rachel's throat tightened. No one had ever talked about love in a meal before, and her old world menus were ornate to the point of chill. Here, a lopsided pancake made her feel like she belonged. After breakfast, Adam dragged out a pile of laundry to hang. Rachel glanced over and suddenly said, "Let me help." "You sure?" He blinked. "I thought you might not be used to it." She smiled, already reaching for a towel. "I used to be used to many things, and none of them made me happy. Let me try getting used to something else." They hung clothes on the porch line together. The morning breeze lifted sleeves and hems. Emma stood below, clapping like she'd found a show. "It looks like a movie, Daddy and Miss Rachel working together." The simple remark made the two adults freeze for just a moment. Their eyes met across the clothesline, quiet, warm. Time paused, a single father, a girl who left her silk life in an ordinary morning turning suddenly to grace. The feeling swelled when Rachel bent and took Emma's flour-sticky hand. "Thank you, sweetheart. I think I'm going to learn how to really live from you and your dad." Adam said nothing, but a new light sparked in his eyes, the kind that hadn't been there for a long time. That afternoon, honeyed sunlight draped the little street. Rachel walked slowly beside Emma, the child's hand gripping hers as if afraid to lose her. Adam followed with a bag of greens from the corner market. The neighborhood was quiet, humble, gray-roofed houses in a neat row, nothing like the shining boulevards Rachel had known. Emma pointed at a tiny storefront. "Miss Rachel, can we stop for candy? They have the best caramel here." Rachel laughed and nodded, letting the girl pull her inside. The air smelled of sugar and almonds, and a memory of childhood rose before grand parties had turned life into ceremony. The shopkeeper, a silver-haired woman, looked Rachel up and down, surprised. Rachel knew why the simple clothes couldn't hide a certain elegance. Her leather shoes, though, worn, still whispered of another tier. New around here, the woman asked, kind but curious, Rachel gave a small, shy smile. Yes, I'm renting a room at the end of the street. The woman's eyes slid to Adam at the door, then back to Rachel. A moment of quiet, as if the whole store listened. Rachel felt herself standing between two worlds, one she had fled, and one that might not take her in. Emma, oblivious, popped the pause like a bubble. She's my friend. She lives with me and Daddy. She ate the pancakes I made. The shop chuckled as one, the air smoothing out. Rachel laughed, 2 tears glinting, not sad exactly, but grateful. As they left, she bent to whisper to Emma, "Thank you for giving me a place here." Emma tilted her bright eyes. "You don't have to thank me. I think you've belonged here for a long time." The swell of feeling rose again when Rachel noticed a few neighbors still watching from the street. Not disdainful, but not fully welcoming either. She felt the pressure. Her past could break the surface at any moment. But when Emma's hand squeezed tighter, Rachel understood something simple. For the first time in her life, she didn't want to run. Adam stepped closer and handed her a bag of apples. His voice was low and warm. "Around here, folks don't care who you are. They just want to know if you're sincere." Rachel looked at him, a small smile opening. Sincere. I've never been more sure than I am now. Evening laid its gold over 3 silhouettes on Willow Street, a quiet father, a carefree little girl, and an heiress learning to be herself. The old street became the stage for a beginning, one none of them could have guessed would change everything. Chapter 2. Pancake Breakfast. The scent of singed batter threaded through the seams of the little kitchen, curling into the early sun like a ribbon of smoke. The old pan hissed with a sharp sizzle as batter spilled over the rim, bubbled and browned. Rachel came down the stairs, one hand steadying the railing against the tremble. The floorboards creaked in time with the steady tick of the wall clock. She swept her hair back and smiled when she saw Adam wrestling the pan and Emma drowning in a polka dot apron trying to tip just 1 drop of syrup only to pour a golden river. "Let me help, Rachel," said, reaching for the wooden spatula. "The trick is to wait for the edges to puff count slowly to 3, then flip." I counted to 10. Adam grimaced, and it still turned more brown than planned. Emma giggled, clutching her belly. "Daddy makes the sunset flavor, Miss Rachel. Mine are sunrise." Rachel laughed. She dipped another ladle of batter and poured it dead center, spreading it thin, listening as the sizzle settled. On the table lay an open workbook, wobbly column, sums numbers scratched out in timid strokes. Emma tugged Rachel's sleeve, eyes shining. "Miss Rachel, will you help me with this one? But teach me in a way that doesn't scare me." "Okay." Rachel's chest pinched without warning. Old memories slid in stern private tutors, a cold marble desk. The warning, "Don't embarrass the family," whispered like ice. She looked down and saw an 8 drawn as 2 mismatched loops, the handwriting of a 6-year-old that somehow looked like her own heart years ago, offbeat under pressure. "Let's try this," Rachel said, pulling an empty plate closer. She flipped a pancake, golden, even fragrant, onto it. "This whole pancake is 1. If we cut it in half..." She sliced cleanly 2 neat semicircles. "Each piece is 1/2. You eat 1/2, Daddy gets the other." "Now what is 1/2 plus 1/2? Emma propped her chin, eyes bright. "A whole round pancake again." "Exactly." Rachel's eyes curved like a crescent moon. So what's 2 plus 3? 2 pieces and 3 more pieces. She lined up small torn bites. 2, then 3. Count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Emma shouted, the last note cracking into laughter. Adam stopped leaning in the doorway, saying nothing. In that moment, the little kitchen, with its old pan, burnt sweet smell, and freckles of syrup, held a strange holy light, the light of understanding. Not because math suddenly turned easy, but because the fear of learning had left his daughter's eyes, maybe for the first time. "You did so well," Rachel murmured, brushing Emma's soft hair. "You don't have to be afraid of homework. Each problem is just a pancake to be shared. So, when I finish, I get to eat it," Emma whispered, like sharing a secret. Rachel tilted her head, pretending to weigh the matter. "If the sous chef agrees." Adam coughed to hide a smile. "The sous chef approves. On one condition, the head chef agrees to eat my first sunrise." Rachel glanced at the pancake with its darker edge, then at Adam's patient eyes. She took a bite, sweet, a little smoky buttery, like a slightly off-key note that's honest enough to move you. "Good," she said, voice lifting, like a pebble dropped into still water. "Because it's cooked with heart." The crest of feeling arrived without warning. Emma wrapped her arms around Rachel's waist. "Miss Rachel, I want you to teach me every morning. I promise I won't cry anymore." Rachel froze, then hugged back slow, soft. Somewhere along her spine, an old hollow filled with the honey warmth of morning. A thin shimmer gathered in her eyes. No grand drama, just a little girl's claim of sister, and a small, bright smile mending a long, torn stretch of years. "Okay," Rachel whispered. "Every morning." After breakfast, the table still smelled of batter and syrup. Sunlight sifted through the curtain and laid bright bands across the wood. Emma placed her math book in front of Rachel, eyes expectant, a stubby pencil chewed down near the eraser. Rachel sat and drew a slow breath. Columns of numbers, weighted addition and subtraction, half-done crossouts everywhere. She remembered perfectly the private study with marble floors, the tutor's hard gaze, every wrong number pulling a frown, and the cold line, "You've shamed the family." Emma poked the pencil against Rachel's hand. "Miss Rachel, I'm not dumb. It's just my head gets all jumbled." The simple honesty broke something tender in Rachel. She smiled, voice unsteady. "I know. I used to feel that way too. But guess what? Every number is like a friend. If you call them by the right name, they'll run to stand together." Emma cocked her head. "Friend 2 and friend 3. Rachel nodded. "That's right. When they stand side by side, they hold hands and become friend 5. Try drawing them." Emma sketched 2 little circles, then looped a curved line between them like a hair tie. "I see it." They made a group. Rachel laughed and nodded. "Exactly. You're much smarter than you think." From across the room, Adam watched, arms folded, saying nothing. The child who usually ducked homework now beamed over a simple sum. Hope, something he'd been afraid to feel, flickered in his eyes. Emma glanced up at Rachel. "You know, when I sit with Daddy, I get scared of being wrong. But with you, it feels like playing." Rachel stilled. A thin tide rose in her throat. She squeezed the small hand in hers. "You don't have to prove anything, Emma. You only have to be you." The moment peaked when Emma's eyes shimmered. Then, "Could you be my sister? I've never had one." The room went quiet. Adam's brow furrowed surprise, softening into something gentler. Rachel looked at the child, her mouth trembling. If you want, I'll be your sister." Emma squealed and flung her arms around Rachel. "Now I have a sister, Sister Rachel." That smile, pure morning light, filled the empty place in Rachel's chest, where a wealthy house had left only echoes. Emma's laughter rang around the kitchen like tiny bells chiming against old wood. Rachel sat there, holding the little girl, Emma's soft brown hair brushing her cheek. Sunlight spilled across them, both a warmth Adam couldn't look away from. He'd seen his daughter avoid numbers, cry herself to sleep, fearing she was not good enough. Yet this morning, in one short hour, she laughed out loud and called a stranger sister. "She's never said that to anyone," Adam blurted, voice rough. Rachel turned. Emma still clung to her waist, utterly unashamed of her joy. Rachel's eyes trembled. She offered a small, careful smile. Maybe she needed someone to trust, not someone to fear. Adam went quiet. A strange feeling rose in him, gratitude, but also caution. He wasn't used to sharing his house or his fragile world of two. But the sight before him cracked the walls he'd built around his heart. He stepped closer and sat across from them. "Rachel," he said softly. She looked up, their eyes caught, and for a breath, both of them saw it. The tiredness, the loneliness, and the hungry wish for peace mirrored back. "Thank you," Adam said this time with certainty. Not for the math, for the way she laughed. Rachel blinked. It had been years since she'd heard "thank you," spoken by a man like that. No etiquette, no polish, just bare gratitude. "You don't have to thank me," she answered, voice trembling. "Emma's given me more than I've given her. She gave me a family I never had." Adam noticed the sheen on her lashes, the tiny quiver there. A girl from silk and glass, who should have been proud and distant, now sat in a small kitchen crying because a child called her sister. He turned away, gripping the chair until his knuckles held. Then Emma, bright as a bell, cut through the hush. "Daddy, now I have Sister Rachel too. Our family's bigger, right?" Adam's throat tightened. The word family in his daughter's mouth unsteadied him. He glanced at Rachel. She was wiping her eyes, but smiling. And for the first time in years, he could imagine a home that held more than two. The sweet smell of pancake still floated in the air when a sudden sizzle burst from the empty pan on the left burner. Emma jumped. Oh, smoke. A thin ribbon rose from the hot skillet. The kitchen filled at once with a scorched smell. Adam sprang up for a towel, but the handle was too hot. He jerked back, nearly dropping the cloth. Rachel moved on. Instinct flipped the switch, clamped a lid on top, smothered the smoke. The two of them acted almost as one. No words, just motion. In the small chaos, their eyes collided tight with alarm, oddly in step. "You okay, Rachel?" asked Breath quick. Adam lifted his hand, skin flushed pink. "Just heat. It's fine." Rachel caught his wrist without thinking, protective and sure. "Let me see. Burns aren't nothing." He hesitated, unaccustomed to being tended by anyone. Her fingers on his skin stilled him. For a second, the little kitchen narrowed to the thud of two hearts. Emma peered up, worried. "Does it hurt, Daddy? I got scared." Rachel turned, smiling to soothe. "He's okay, sweetheart. Your daddy's strong, but even strong people need taking care of right." The line landed deep in Adam. He'd been carrying everything alone so long, he'd forgotten he was allowed to lean. He drew a slow breath and looked at her. "Thank you," he said quietly. The air cooled. Rachel found a burn cream in the drawer and smoothed a careful line across his skin. They were close enough that Adam could hear her breathing steady, but a little shaky. Emma piped up, delighted. Miss Rachel is like a stepmom from a fairy tale, but the nice kind. Both adults laughed, and the tension dissolved. Yet some thin thread of light remained between them. Unexpected harmony, a new fragile bond. The old kitchen smoke cleared, felt warm again, as if nothing had happened. But somewhere inside Adam, a thought crept in. Maybe this girl didn't just bring Emma joy. Maybe she let him exhale too. The last of the haze drifted away, leaving butter and syrup soft in the air. Emma bounced around the table, cheeks flushed, bubbling. "Daddy, this is the best day. We have to take a picture." Adam faltered. Since Amelia, his late wife, was gone, he hadn't wanted another photo. Every frame in the house had stopped 3 years back, when Emma was learning to walk. But his daughter's eyes begged, pulling him and Rachel closer. He couldn't tell her no. "Okay, just one," he said, voice tight. Emma propped the phone on a bookshelf and set the timer. "Hurry, all three of us closer." Rachel laughed a little awkward as Emma wedged her beside Adam. When their shoulders brushed, Rachel heard her heartbeat tumble. Adam stiffened. Then Emma's small hand landed on both of theirs, and the awkwardness eased. "Smile," Emma called. The phone flashed. In the frame, Adam leaned toward his daughter. Rachel curved in from the other side. 3 faces, 3 different smiles. One steadfast, one shy, one carefree. And together, they cast the warm light of home. The shutter clicked, and Emma grabbed the phone, eyes wide. "It's perfect. This is my new family picture." The innocent words stalled both adults. Adam stared at the image, his heart tightening. For so long, he'd believed his family would always be missing a piece. But in this picture, the empty place seemed, if only for a breath, filled. Rachel went quiet, a hand rising to her chest, where her heart beat too hard. She had never imagined herself inside a family photo, certainly not with a widower and a little girl she'd only just met. And yet, she had never felt more at home. Emma hugged the phone and turned to Rachel. "You're not just Sister Rachel. You're my family." Tears gathered at Rachel's lashes. She bent and kissed the top of Emma's head, soft and warm, smelling faintly of milk, and whispered, "Thank you for giving me a home." In the new morning light, the old kitchen wasn't merely a place to eat. It had become the room where a brand new family had just begun. Chapter 3. Quiet Kindness. Monday morning. The Willow Street Market opened with the soft jingle of the bell on its glass door. Dew still clung to the apple crates. Coffee from the corner counter mingled with the papery scent of brown bags. Rachel slipped inside, pulled her light coat close, and glanced at the chalkboard. Eggs, milk, flour, today's special. No discount on butter or almond milk like she'd hoped. She smiled anyway and began filling her basket flour milk eggs, a just right bunch of bananas, a few potatoes, and then she paused. On the back aisle, a tiny shelf of stationery, a box of yellow pencils, and a pale green notebook. "You're the boarder at the Carters, aren't you the shopkeeper, Mrs.?" Quinn asked, eyes bright behind a beaded chain. "Yes, ma'am." Rachel lowered her voice at the counter. "Could you help me with something? Ring the receipt as if the butter's 50% off and the notebook and pencils are a back-to-school gift. I'll cover the difference separately." Mrs. Quinn blinked, then understood at once. "You don't want to bruise his pride." Rachel nodded, pressing her lips together. He's too proud to accept help. I don't want kindness to feel like a debt. The woman smiled and tapped the keys. The printer whirred out a receipt neatly stamped with community promotion. As Rachel tucked a few little cards that read, "Kids welcome," into the bag, Mrs. Quinn leaned in. Emma likes to make her E's a little round. New pencils might make her braver. Thank you, Rachel, whispered, eyes shining. They reached the school at 7:45. The yard was washed in pale sun. A distant bus horn drifted over the line of bright backpacks. Emma hopped on one foot along the stepping stones, her hands still faintly sticky with yesterday's syrup. Now that I have Sister Rachel walking me in, today's going to be my best day, she declared. Rachel laughed, kneeling to zip the front pocket. Looks like Willow Market sent a back-to-school present. She slipped the pencils and notebook inside, along with a tiny card in careful print. For a brave girl. The market bear. Emma's eyes went wide. She hugged her backpack like treasure. I got new pencils. Maybe my E's won't get wobbly anymore. She looked up, hopeful. Do you think I can do it? Sister Rachel swallowed, leaning one knee against the white fence as something tender tugged at her chest. Not only can you'll surprise yourself with how beautiful it looks. She drew a small star on Emma's wrist with a pencil. Here, a fear-proof star. Behind them, Adam studied the receipt. Half-price butter-free school supplies. He frowned, then caught Mrs. Quinn's wave from the curbside cart as she pointed to a kids' welcome sign. He held his breath a beat, ready to say, "We don't need this." But when he saw his daughter clutching the green notebook, eyes lit from within, he only exhaled and gave Rachel a small nod. This town is kinder than I thought, he said quietly. It is, Rachel answered, still watching Emma. Sometimes kindness doesn't need to be on the sign. The bell chimed. Emma wrapped Rachel in a fierce hug. You'll wait for me. I'll be here at the end of the street. Rachel smiled, brushing a flyaway hair from her forehead. A cool gust slid by, with the scent of the soccer field and new paper. Rachel's heart tightened gently. She was no longer a girl on the run. She was a sister at a school gate sending a child into the world with yellow pencils, a green notebook, and a star to keep fears small. Adam watched in silence, grateful. And yet the old pride stirred. Still, when Emma turned and waved her smile bright enough to melt whatever winter remained in him, Adam understood some debts aren't paid in money, but in staying good to each other for longer than a day. He murmured, just loud enough for Rachel to hear, "Thank you," for the discount that didn't make the board. That afternoon, sunlight pooled like honey at the school gate, and the maples whispered in a mild wind. Rachel waited with the cluster of parents, a simple cardigan on her shoulders, and a market basket in her hand. Inside, a few red apples nestled against a slim library book, How Children Learn. Small shoes pounded the pavement. Emma burst through the gate hair wild, clutching the green notebook. Sister Rachel, I wrote it. She flipped to the first page, Emma Carter, a little slanted nicely round. Rachel bent fingertips resting on the fresh paper. The pencil marks were bold, the strokes a bit shaky, proud all the same. Beautiful, she whispered. See? Sometimes all it takes is a new notebook to help you believe you can write beautifully. Emma nodded, eyes bright like a quiet lake. My teacher said I got better. I think it was the fear-proof star. She held up her wrist. The star had smudged to a shadow, but she wore it like a charm. Adam came up, hands dusty from a job site. He looked at the page and fell silent. The sight of his daughter beaming over this first line unsteadied him. Just a pencil and a notebook, he thought, and she's grown wings. Let me keep a few of these first pages, Rachel suggested. Every time you write, I'll sign as witness. Later, when you're flying through words, we'll look back and see how far you came. Emma squealed. Like a contract, Adam laughed an easy, unguarded sound for the first time all day. A family contract, he said, his eyes softening. Rachel's heart skipped. Family contract and her parents' house contract meant money and power. Here it was a school notebook and a child's delighted grin. Emma leaned in and whispered, "Sister, I know you bought them. Daddy said butter wasn't really on sale." Rachel startled, but Emma quickly smiled, eyes shining. "I won't tell. I just wanted you to know. I'm really thankful." Tears pressed fast. Rachel hugged the child tight. "Then let's keep this our secret, just us sisters." Adam saw it all, something unnamed rising in him. In that moment, the girl wasn't a stranger renting a room. She was the quiet pair of hands fitting wings to his child. On a busy weekend, the market was livelier than usual. Crates of greens brushed up against glossy red tomatoes. Rachel walked beside Emma with a basket. Adam followed, counting costs the way he always did. "Daddy, can we get more apples?" Emma pointed at a pretty pink heap. Adam hesitated. "We're good for today, kiddo. We still need rice and milk." Rachel stepped in with a smile. "Looks like apples are on special." "Right, Mrs. Quinn." The owner, well familiar with Rachel by now, blinked once, then nodded. "That's right, half off for our favorite small customer." Emma squealed and hugged the bag. "See, Daddy's sister Rachel always finds the specials." Adam said nothing, but doubt flickered in his eyes. While the girls picked through the greens, he sidled up to the stall and lowered his voice. "Tell me straight, are those apples really on sale?" Mrs. Quinn wavered, glanced toward Rachel, then dropped her gaze. "No. She pays the difference. She just doesn't want you to feel cornered." Something eased and ached at once in Adam's chest. He turned and saw Rachel tying up a bag of vegetables, smiling as if none of it mattered. To her, it didn't. To him, it was everything. On the walk home, the breeze pushed along the street. Emma skipped ahead. Adam fell into step beside Rachel, his voice low and slow. "You don't have to do that. I know buttermilk, the rest weren't actually discounted." Rachel faltered, her grip on the basket tightening. "I only wanted Emma to have enough. I wasn't trying to make you feel small." Adam stopped and met her eyes. In the blue, there was pride, and something moved. "Do you think I can't provide for her?" Rachel shook her head, eyes wet. "No, I think you've done everything you can. But sometimes kindness doesn't need the scale. I just wanted to give her a small joy. That's all." He went quiet. Pride cooled, gratitude warmed. He understood this wasn't pity. It was a gentle patch sewn where life had frayed. Emma spun back, hoisting the apple bag. "I can bring these to class. My friends will be so jealous." Rachel laughed and swiped at a quick tear. Adam watched them both sighed and let a rare smile show. "Maybe I should learn how to accept that kind of quiet kindness," he said. The next morning, the schoolyard glowed. Children buzzed. The bell sang across the blocks. Rachel walked Emma to her room, with its old wooden desks, long since polished by years of elbows. At Emma's seat, Rachel slipped a new box of crayons and a few green-covered notebooks into the desk's cubby. "Oh, where did this come from?" Emma gasped, lifting the crayons. Rachel's smile turned playful. She put a finger to her lips. "Maybe classroom magic." Emma hugged the box face alight, as if someone had given her a treasure chest. "I can draw a rainbow. Now I bet my grades will look prettier." The feeling swelled when Adam at the doorway, seeing his daughter off, caught the whole scene. Pride still twitched, but watching Emma hold those crayons like life itself, he couldn't bring himself to object. His gaze settled on Rachel, her hand smoothing Emma's hair, her smile as gentle as sunlight through leaves. They walked home more slowly than usual. Rachel held an empty bag. Adam kept pace in silence. At last he exhaled. "You don't have to hide it." "I saw." Rachel stopped, color rising to her cheeks. "I just think she deserves more. Not because you're not enough, because she needs more reasons to believe." Adam turned, eyes gone dark and deep. "You know, I've gotten used to carrying everything alone. But when I watched her hug that notebook, smiling like the world got bigger, I realized there are things I can't give her by myself." His voice thinned. "Thank you, Rachel, for doing what I couldn't admit I couldn't do." Rachel met his gaze, eyes bright. "You don't owe me thanks. I'm not giving to get. I'm giving because Emma makes me feel like I belong." Their eyes held a second longer than is ordinary. No landlord and lodger, just two souls trembling in the same truth. Love doesn't need a name, only a willing giver. That afternoon, low clouds dragged over Willow Street, and the wind picked up. The dismissal bell sent waves of students spilling from the gate. Rain began big first drops, turning the schoolyard into a rippling mirror. Rachel snapped open a small umbrella, good for one at best. Emma ran up, uniform, spotted dark. Adam rushed forward, sheltering her with his worn jacket. "Daddy, you're getting soaked," she cried, clutching his arm. Rachel tipped her umbrella and stepped in close, pulling both of them beneath the tiny circle of cover. Her shoulder wet through, hair clung to her cheek. Her eyes were calm. "Closer. If 3 tuck in it still fits." Adam stilled. Rain hammered at the eaves. Water streamed from the little roof line. Their shoes went heavy with it. Inside the cramped umbrella, warmth pooled the whisper of Emma's breath, the soft soap in Rachel's hair, the loud hush of rain just beyond. Sister Rachel is like an angel who always brings an umbrella. Emma giggled, tapping the rim. Adam looked at Rachel. The distance, now, only inches. Water slid down into her collar. She didn't shift, holding the umbrella steady over father and child. Something odd and tender loosened inside him. The old pride that kept him apart began to melt before this quiet, stubborn generosity. "You'll get drenched," he said, voice nearly swallowed by the storm. Rachel turned a simple smile. "Better me than the two of you. Easiest choice I've made all day." Plain words, but they struck like a bell in Adam's chest. No one, not since Amelia, had said anything like that to him. For a heartbeat, the man who'd locked his heart down felt it tremble open. They walked through the rain with soggy shoes and hair pasted to their foreheads. Emma sang some small, happy song. Adam glanced back at Rachel, eyes full of things not yet ready for words. And he knew this little umbrella had covered more than rain. It had covered the long, empty space inside him. Chapter 4. Laughter at the fair. They set up the fair on the field behind the school every year. But tonight, It glowed like a piece of the Milky Way had dropped to earth. Strands of warm bulbs wrapped the wooden posts. Neon reds and greens blinked over signs that read, Carousel, Ferris, Games. The air was thick with buttered popcorn, spun sugar, and cinnamon roasting sweet enough to fill your lungs with one deep breath. Emma tugged Rachel forward, sneakers skipping through wisps of straw, her hair flying like a kite tail in the breeze. Sister Rachel cotton candy. Emma squealed, pointing to a little booth where hot sugar spun into a pink cloud. Adam hesitated a beat, eyes sliding by habit to the price board. Rachel caught the flicker and bent to whisper, "Let's buy one big one and share it. Tastes better under the law of sharing." Emma beamed. Adam let out a quiet breath and nodded thanks, without the weight of saying it. They walked and pulled off pieces together. Emma placed a tuft in Rachel's hand, then another in Adam's solemn, as if it were a ceremony. "We have to eat at the same time. 1, 2, 3. The sugar melted on their tongues, smudging sticky sweetness at the corners of their mouths. Rachel laughed and dabbed a fingertip against the sugar on Emma's cheek. Proof of happiness. Music crackled to life from the carousel. White horses gilded at the mane circled beneath the blinking lights, an old loudspeaker wheezing out a stately tune. "I want the curly-maned one." Emma stood on tiptoe, stars in her eyes. Adam bought the ticket, thin, foamy paper pinched between work-rough fingers. He didn't speak, but Rachel saw it, the small luxury paid for with an entire day's labor. Emma climbed up arms around the brass pole, her smile refusing to close. As the ride started, she stretched a hand past the railing, small palm open to catch the wind. Rachel lifted her hand without thinking. So did Adam. Their hands didn't quite touch between them. Emma's hand flashed and waved. 3 hands, 3 heights, caught in the same breath, like a candid frame, a child at the center, 2 adults on either side forming a quiet arch above her. Emma's laughter rang on clear as glass bells. The warm, sudden ache in Rachel's chest took her by surprise. She remembered glittering galas, polished smiles under chandeliers. But real joy, it turned out, was a squeaky carousel, a sticky handful of sugar, and a glance that met and held. Adam looked over. The midway lights softened the lines of his face. "Thanks for coming with us tonight." Rachel bit back a smile voice, low as wind. "I'm learning to laugh the way she does." The carousel slowed. Take a picture while I'm flying," Emma called. Adam fumbled for his phone. Rachel leaned and framed the shot just as Emma rose to the crest. Click. In the photo, the rocking horse lifted into a ring of light. Emma's grin floated like cotton candy against the night. And below, 2 grown-ups stood a breath closer, smiling as if they had stumbled into a happiness they'd thought too expensive to afford. A carnival barker sang out, "Ring a bottle, win a bear." Step right up, a crowd pressed in at the game booth, where glass bottles glittered in a pyramid under gold bulbs. Emma tugged Rachel's hand. "Sister Rachel, let's try I Want That Bear." The bear was nearly Emma's size snowy fur and a red bow perched high on the shelf. Rachel laughed and bent close. "Are you sure it's hard?" Emma bobbed her head. "If I don't win, you can hug me instead of the bear." Behind them, Adam's mouth tipped at the corner. He reached for his wallet, but Rachel was quicker, laying bills on the counter with a steady look. "I've got this. Tonight, Emma gets a bear." The man slid over 3 plastic rings. Rachel inhaled and tossed the first mist. Emma's face pinched. She squeezed Rachel's fingers. The second clipped a neck, then sprang free. The crowd noise swelled. Emma's shoulders tightened. "It's okay." Rachel soothed, offering the last ring to Emma. "You try. Trust me you can." "Me, but..." Rachel laid her hand over Emma's, both of them cradling the ring. "Pretend it's a big letter O. All you have to do is write it in the air." They threw together. The ring arced in a smooth curve, twirled through the lights, and tack dropped clean over the center bottle. The crowd whooped. Emma jumped and shouted, "I did it, Sister Rachel, and I did it." The booth man handed down the giant bear. Emma hugged it, then suddenly pushed it into Rachel's arms. "You keep it. You're the one who brought the luck." Rachel's breath snagged. She hugged Emma back, eyes stinging. "No, it's yours. But if you agree, I'll hold one ear and you hold the other. Then the bear belongs to both of us." Watching them, something warm moved through Adam. He'd never believed these noisy games could give anything but passing racket. Yet tonight, hearing Emma's bright laugh and Rachel's free one, he knew there are simple joys no fortune can buy. Under the fair lights, 3 silhouettes stood together: a spare, quiet man, a young woman with a stuffed bear, and a child laughing pink-cheeked. To Adam, it looked like a family photo he'd never dared imagine. A wooden sign shimmered in the glow house of mirrors. "Dare to enter." Tall panels of glass threw colored reflections into a glittering maze. Emma hugged the bear and stared, eager and unsure. "Daddy's sister Rachel. Can we go in? I want to see how many me's there are." "Careful not to get lost," Adam warned. Rachel smiled and tapped her nose to Emma's forehead. "If you get lost, I'll find you. Anywhere." They stepped inside. The door thudded shut. The midway sounds thinned to a far-off hum. Red and blue shimmered over their faces. Mirrors upon mirrors multiplied them. Emma darted ahead, splitting into a flock of giggling angels. "Daddy, I'm here." Or maybe there. Her voice bounced part, real part, echo. Adam hurried forward, only to bump his palm against cold glass. He frowned, thrown off. Rachel's laugh rang out loose and bright like a silver bell. For the first time since Adam had met her, it was effortless. "You're chasing yourself." He turned and faced a dozen versions of his own furrowed brow. A rare, low chuckle escaped him. It had been a long time since he'd heard himself laugh. Emma slapped her hand to a pain. "Got you!" she shouted, touching Rachel's reflection instead. Rachel slipped around a corner and scooped Emma from behind. "Got you!" Their laughter rippled down the corridors. Adam rounded a bend, his foot slid, and he nearly stumbled into a mirror. Rachel caught his hand, and suddenly they were close enough to feel the other's breath. In a hall of false images, only one felt true. Rachel's brown eyes bright with worry and warmth. Emma crashed softly into them and wrapped her arms around both. "I found Daddy and Sister. We're not lost anymore." She tipped her head, grinning. "Just like a family of 3. Adam stilled his hand, still in Rachel's. They looked at each other, said nothing, and smiled anyway. In the maze of illusions, the truest moment was 3 people laughing until tears sprang. At the end of the games row, a small sign read, "Lucky Draw." Every ticket a chance bulbs winked over a glass box stuffed with folded slips. Prizes lined the shelf, plastic bracelets, a hand-stitched cloth doll. Emma bounced bare, squashed to her chest. "I want to try. Maybe I'll win magic." Adam started to demur, but Rachel nodded. One ticket. Let her keep the dream. He sighed and bought the thin slip. Emma shut her eyes, plunged her hand into the box, shook it like a little prayer, and pulled. The attendant unfolded it and grinned. Congratulations. A hand-embroidered fabric bracelet. Emma cradled the red band, eyes shining. But instead of slipping it onto her own wrist, she turned to Rachel. This is for you. Because you brought me luck at the ring toss. Because you were brave and took me into the mirrors. And because I want you to remember, I'm always with you. Rachel went still. A tiny cloth bracelet worth almost nothing. But when Emma tied it around her wrist, each red stitch seemed to thread straight through to her heart. Emma, I don't even know what to say. Rachel's voice trembled. No one's ever given me a gift this honest. At Adam's side, something in his gaze flickered. He saw the teardrop shimmer at Rachel's lash. He saw Emma's little hand cinch the bracelet snug, claiming a bond. He understood all the luxury that once wrapped this woman had never given her a sense of belonging. A cheap red band from a child had. Rachel bent and hugged Emma throat tight. Thank you. This is the finest treasure I've ever had. The music swelled popcorn and cheers swirling together. Yet for the three of them, everything else faded to a small red loop thread by thread, a family being woven in quiet. Night settled. The midway thinned. The old speaker still pounded out a cheerful tune. Across the grass, people gathered and tilted their faces upward, waiting for the final moment, the fireworks. Emma rode high on Adam's shoulders, arms around the giant bear eyes wide and bright. Rachel stood close, thumb circling the red bracelet at her wrist, her heart beating faster than she meant it to. Boom! The first firework burst open, gold petals across the black. Then green, red, violet blossoming, then raining in starry threads. The light washed Emma's face, and her smile outshone the sparks. It's so pretty, Daddy, prettier than any year, she cried, laughter spilling out. Rachel looked up smiling before she knew it. When she turned, she found Adam already looking her way. In the red flare, the weariness in his face seemed gentler, and something warmer took its place. A bright sweep of crimson lit the moment his gaze held hers. No dodging, no caution. In it, Rachel saw the thing she'd longed for most, home recognition, a place where her heart could rest. Look, Sister Rachel, Emma clapped. It's like the sky is writing your name. Rachel laughed, and a quiet tear slid free. Adam saw it. His hand tightened at his side, caught between reaching to brush it away and guarding the fragile distance. He chose the smallest, truest thing, and said, his voice almost lost under the thunder, "Thank you for being here." Rachel heard every word. Her heart trembled like the sky itself. Under the fire-lit dark, three figures stood together, a man who had closed his heart, a woman who had fled her past, and a child who brought back laughter. Their simple joy, bathed in flickering light, became the kind of happiness that once felt impossibly rare, now finally real and within reach. Chapter 5. The Secret. Unveiled afternoon on Willow Street held its breath. White shirts hung from the clothesline, sun stitched into every thread. The porch boards sighed. The kitchen clock murmured. Emma sat on the steps, chalking a wobbly rainbow onto the concrete, while Rachel sorted a basket of produce. Adam stood on the porch, sleeves rolled, drying a wrench he'd just rinsed. The sound arrived softly first, a low purr like a cat stalking, then the hiss of rubber on gravel. A black sedan slid to the end of the street, swallowing the pale sky in its mirror-gloss paint. It stopped at the old gate. The door opened. A man stepped out, gray suit, cut to perfection, silver cufflinks, engraved RM steel. In his eyes, pulled the air taut. Rachel went rigid. She knew that stride, that cologne, even the fine crease at the corner of his eye that appeared every time he signed $100 million contract. Dad. She whispered the word, shattering like crystal on stone. Richard Morgan did not look around. He looked straight. Rachel Morgan. His voice was as flat as glass. Come home. Adam shifted instinctively, angling himself in front of Rachel. Who are you, Richard Morgan? Her father. His gaze swept the wooden porch, the humming clothesline, the smear of chalk rainbow on the cement. Something tight flickered thin as a knife blade. And the man responsible for returning his daughter to where she belongs. Emma looked up, blinking. Mr. Sister Rachel belongs at my house. Richard paused, noticing the child for the first time. And who are you, Emma Carter? My daddy's daughter. She lifted her chin, then clasped Rachel's hand. And she's my sister. That small hand squeezed Rachel's wrist, where the red-stitched bracelet still rested, pulled taut like a thread of fate. Rachel's breath caught. She wanted to step back, but the cold voice of the past pushed her to the edge of the step. Rachel. Richard lowered his tone to a command. Enough of this nonsense. Who are you living with? With us, Adam answered, unflinching. And this is her home for now. Home. Richard's mouth tipped, an attic that creaks. His eyes snagged on the photo taped to the fridge behind the window, the breakfast picture of 3. His expression darkened. How long do you think this pretend family can last? Rachel drew a breath. Her hand trembled. I'm not pretending. I'm somewhere I can breathe. You belong to Morgan Holdings, Richard cut in. You are not a creature of squeaking steps and childish chalk. Adam went still for a beat, then stepped off the porch and stood between Richard and the stairs. You can speak to your daughter here, but no one crosses my threshold uninvited. A rear door on the sedan clicked. A man in black edged into view. The air strung tight as a bow, about to snap. Emma clung to Rachel. You don't have to go if you don't want to. A tear slipped hot quiet down Rachel's cheek. She lifted her chin and met her father's steel without bowing for the first time. I want to stay. Richard's eyes narrowed. Good. Then we'll talk like adults. He motioned the guard back, then bent his voice toward Rachel, cool and heavy as lead. 10 minutes. In the car. Or we do it here in front of them. A breeze slid the shirts along the line. White cloth clapped like an inverted applause. On the concrete, a tire track smeared Emma's chalk rainbow. And in the Carter yard, a line appeared thin as a shadow, sharp as a blade. Silence thickened until you could hear the kitchen clock ticking inside. Rachel stood, very still, hands clenched to a tremble. Emma pressed close, her small arms encircling Rachel's waist, as if to anchor her from being carried off. Adam swung the porch door open, his voice low and firm. We don't have to stage this for a child. If you want to talk, step inside. But let it be clear, this is my house, and no one will coerce my guest here. Richard considered him, a hard smile not quite reaching his eyes. He entered. Leather soles struck the boards, thock, thock. The porch lamp carved his features in gold, the cool severity of a statue cut from marble. Rachel. He said only her name, not daughter. I've given you time. Your running ends now." Rachel raised her head. In her eyes sat the shadow of the girl who once hovered at the edge of family meetings where everything was priced in shares. But this time, though, her voice shook. It didn't break. "I'm not running. I'm choosing a place to live like a person." Richard scoffed and turned to Adam. "Do you know who she is? The only daughter of Richard Morgan, heir to a $30 billion enterprise. She's not a boarder in some attic, and certainly not a sister playing house with your child." Adam's fingers tightened on the chair back. His gaze darkened, but stayed steady. "I knew from the start she wasn't ordinary. What matters isn't whose daughter she is. It's how she treats mine." Emma stepped in, voice high and trembling. "Don't scold, Sister Rachel. She's kind to me. She stuck stars on my ceiling so I won't be afraid of the dark, and she taught me math with pancakes. I want her to stay." The words cut the quiet like a blade. Richard flinched, taking in the child's tears over losing a sister. For a blink, his eyes softened, then hardened again. "Rachel, listen to me. The moment the press smells this, they won't stop. They will grind you down and grind." His glance slid across the kitchen to the taped photo of 3. "Everyone you're clutching." Rachel's throat closed, the old fear rushing back, yet Emma's grip on the red bracelet held. When Rachel looked down, she saw not just a child's fear of loss, but absolute trust. She faced her father, eyes wet and clear. "I am not a number on a cap table anymore, Dad. I'm a person. Here with them, I can breathe for the first time." Richard froze, unprepared for a daughter who no longer bowed. The air grew heavy as lead. Outside, the wind lifted the last chalk dust of a rainbow. Emma stared up through tears and whispered, "If you're really her dad, you should let her be happy." The innocent verdict struck the richest man in the room, right where he had no armor. Evening sagged low. Pale light pooled across the old boards. In the kitchen, Rachel read softly to Emma, trying to rinse the room of tension. On the porch, the air was iron, where Richard and Adam stood a few steps apart, 2 worlds facing. Arms folded, Adam's gaze was wood dark. "You want to take her back? Lock her in the golden cage again." Richard braced a hand on the rail. Eyes narrowed. "You don't understand. This world isn't simple. My daughter was born to shoulder a company, not wash dishes in a sagging kitchen." Adam's laugh was dry, brittle as bark. "You think dishwashing is disgrace, I think living without a choice is." Richard's stare sharpened. "What do you know about responsibility? You're a failed repairman, a widower scraping by." The words sliced old scar. Adam's jaw set. He breathed once deep. For a second, he nearly let go. Then Emma's fair laughter from the night before flashed Rachel's gentle smile the bear clutched in small arms. He lifted his head, voice low and sure. "You're right. I have no fortune, no empire. I have a child who needs me. Because of that, I know the price of freedom, of simple happiness, something money can't teach." Richard's hand whitened on the railing. A vein rose blue. Night jasmine edged in on the breeze. Their eyes locked, power on one side, protection on the other. "I won't let my daughter wreck her future for a man like you," Richard said, voice like a bar. Adam stepped half a pace, shoulders bracing like a post in a storm. "And I won't let you steal the smile she just found." The kitchen door opened. Rachel stepped out with Emma in tow. She saw the 2 men squared in the dimming light, and her heart shook, not with fear, but with the shock of being defended. Are they going to fight? Emma whispered. No, Rachel murmured, bending close. They're learning what love means. Dusk gathered a wealthy father on one side, an ordinary steady man on the other. Both stood for the same reason, a woman named Rachel Morgan finally choosing her own life. The last light thinned behind the maples. Shadow spilled across the Carter yard. Richard sat on the old porch chair, a high-end suit laid stark against cracked boards. Rachel came out again. Adam had taken Emma to the study. Father and daughter alone. You've shamed me enough. Rachel Richard began low and cold. Richard Morgan's daughter cannot disappear and reappear in a rotting house like this. If the press gets wind, the whole family is a joke. Rachel stood straight, fists tight enough to mark her palms. Dad, I've spent years pleasing number shareholders' galas, and in those rooms I never felt seen. Richard tilted his head, eyes flashed sharp. And you think here in this shabby yard you'll find what love a pretend family. You were born to inherit, not to drown in smallness. Rachel bit her lip. Tears beaded, but her voice held. Those small things are the largest I've ever had. Did you hear Emma's laughter today? It rang louder than any ballroom applause. Did you see Adam's eyes when he stood in front of me? Truer than any toast around a boardroom table. Richard rose. His shadow swallowed the planks. Choose Rachel. Come back to power, to safety, to the Morgan name. Or stay here and lose everything. Night wind rattled the maple leaves. Rachel cupped her wrist, the red bracelet snug. Each stitch tugged the center of her heart. She lifted her chin voice tight and resolved. I lost everything living your way. Here I found myself. And I choose that. Richard hesitated. For a moment he saw no longer the frightened child, but a woman standing up. A tear slid down Rachel's cheek, and a small smile lifted pain and release in one. Richard turned his hand barely briefly unsteady. He left only, you'll regret this. The car door slammed. The sound echoed in the quiet yard. Rachel stood, chest-heaving eyes bright with tears, and for the first time free. The engine's hum faded, leaving the Carter yard heavy and still. Leaves skittered from the eaves like flakes of memory. Rachel stayed where she was, fingers tight on the red thread, her legs suddenly weak. The back door clicked. Adam stepped out with a mug of warm water. He paused, taking in her trembling outline under the porch light, then set the cup on the step. I heard, he said, voice deep and companionable, not prying. It's no small thing to say those words to your father. Rachel turned. Tears spilled. I was shaking. I wanted to run. But when Emma held my hand, I couldn't turn away. Adam exhaled. The dark in his eyes gentled. He moved a little closer, just enough that their shoulders nearly met. That wasn't weakness. That was courage. I used to think courage meant going it alone. Today you showed me. It's choosing what your heart needs, even when the world says no. Rachel's breath caught. She looked at him through a blur. You're not angry that I hid who I was. Adam lifted his gaze steady. I'd be angry if you weren't true to Emma. But you've loved her like a real sister. What matters more than that? Moon-soft silence fell. A tear broke, and this time Rachel's smile came with it, thin and real. In Adam's eyes, she found no judgment, no fear, only quiet trust. Thank you, she whispered, voice as small as the night wind, for not turning away. Adam tipped his head, meeting her watery eyes. If anyone's earned the right to stay, it's you. Under the porch lamp's trembling gold, they stood together. Inside, Emma slept with a giant bear tucked against her, unaware that out on the porch, her father and her sister had weathered a storm, and in that storm, a new trust had been born. Chapter 6. Father and Daughter. Face to face. Morning on Willow Street had a chill to it. Coffee from the Carter kitchen tangled with the damp wood scent of the porch. Rachel stood on the steps with a chipped ceramic mug in her hands, eyes fixed on the end of the lane. Each time she shifted her weight, the floorboards creaked like a heartbeat, keeping time with her nerves. The familiar engine rolled low. The black sedan slid onto the gravel and stopped by the white fence. The door opened. Richard Morgan stepped out. Dark suit, charcoal tie, his gaze honed like a newly sharpened blade. On both sides of the lane doors cracked open, Mrs. Quinn behind her coffee cart, Mr. Hale the carpenter leaning on his hammer, two schoolgirls whispering behind a maple. The murmurs dribbled across the porch like pebbles. That's the father of the attic girl. Looks very rich. Morgan, see that name in the papers. Rachel. Richard didn't greet, didn't glance around. Get in the car. Now. Her fingers whitened around the mug. The door behind her eased open. Adam stood just inside the frame, a quiet anchor in shadow. On the middle step, Emma peeked out, clutching her bare eyes, wary. Dad, Rachel, said, her voice steadier than she expected. I'm not going. Richard took the first step, his heel thudding once. You're dragging our name into this shabby spectacle. The press is already asking. The board wants answers. You've been out of control long enough. The neighbors held their breath. A maple leaf drifted, settling in a crack between porch boards. Rachel set her mug on the railing and stepped forward. I'm not a project to be managed. You're an heir, Richard said, tightening his grip on his briefcase. Home is the penthouse, the boardroom, the security we built. Not a creaking porch and a line of laundry. The moment crested when Emma slipped down a step and quietly took Rachel's wrist, right where the red hand-stitched bracelet sat. The small, warm hold pinned Rachel between two worlds. She drew a long breath and turned fully to her father. You can call that safety, she said, slow and deliberate. But to me, home isn't a mansion, it's love. The porch fell silent. Mrs. Quinn let out a tiny, "Oh, Mr. Hale's hammer," tapped off beat. In the doorway, Adam lifted his head. His eyes met Rachel's for a heartbeat enough to pass a discreet warmth across the space. Richard's brow pinched. Love doesn't pay invoices. Love doesn't stop a stock slide. Rachel shook her head. But love is what keeps people when everything else collapses. In the penthouse, I learned to smile for cameras. On this porch, I learned to breathe. Richard cut the air with his hand, thunder smothered into his tone. You'd choose poverty, gawking strangers, public humiliation over your place. Rachel didn't retreat. She moved half a step forward, shielding the child who clung to her hand. I choose a home. And home, as I just said, isn't an address. It's the people who let me be honest. The whispers shifted less curiosity, more sympathy. At the porch's edge, a photo taped to the fridge caught the light through the kitchen window. Adam, Emma, Rachel. 3 crooked smiles bent by Scotch tape but warm. Richard's jaw flexed. Reflected in the car's black paint, the gray sky, and old porch buckled together, 2 worlds double exposed in his eyes. Last time, Richard said cold enough to sting. Get in. Or, from this second, you are no longer a Morgan. Rachel closed her eyes, once opened them clear and bright. Then from this second, I'm Rachel. Behind her, Adam exhaled as if someone had loosened an old knot. Emma squeezed tighter and whispered, "I'm with you." On the porch, as the murmurs thinned, a choice was spoken out loud, not in dollars, but in courage. Wind curled around the steps, carrying the wet earth scent left by last night's rain. Richard stood tall, his shadow draping over Emma's little shoes and Rachel's plain skirt. His gaze cut like a blade. His even voice hit heavier than a hammer on a stake. "You think this is simple?" he said, chin lifted. "The media has the scent. They're writing that the Morgan heiress ran away to an attic. The board is howling. Our stock is down 2% in a week. Every second you stand here, millions evaporate." The neighbors murmured again. 2% of a billion. So it really is the Morgans. How can that small girl carry this? Rachel's hand trembled, but she didn't bow anymore. She lifted her face, porch light catching brown eyes. "I am not a stock. I am not a number for anyone's ledger." Richard narrowed his eyes and flicked a document. "This is a provisional will. If you don't come back, you lose your inheritance shares, assets, houses, the name. You will have nothing." His words cracked the little yard like thunder. Emma flinched and hugged Rachel hard. "Don't go. You don't need a mansion. You have our house." Rachel knelt, wrapped the child, a tear falling into Emma's hair. She rose and met her father's stare. "You can take everything you call mine, but you can't take the love I have here. Home isn't a mansion, it's love. And I would rather lose it all than return to a place without it." Richard's features twitched. His eyes dimmed a shade. The street went quiet, except for leaves ticking along the curb. Adam stepped out of the doorway, voice calm, but granite solid. "You can threaten with money, but what you don't understand is this. We don't live by money here. She isn't your heiress, and she isn't my tenant. She's someone who found a real roof." Richard gripped the briefcase. His breath quickened, but he didn't answer at once. Something warred in his eyes, the father and the magnate. Emma looked straight at him, small voice steady. "If you really love Sister Rachel, you'll let her stay where she smiles." The childish pronouncement struck like a verdict. Richard said nothing. Only his hand on the case trembled barely. His threat still hung like a low cloud. But this time, it wasn't just Rachel and Adam standing across from him. The whole of Willow Street began to speak. Mrs. Quinn set her kettle down with a bang and stepped to the fence. Mr. Morgan, with respect, "Your daughter has never acted superior here. She's up early buying buns for Emma she pays and has me ring it as a promotion. That's not running away. That's a young woman learning to live true." Mr. Hale braced his hammer voice, rough but carrying. "I see her walk the girl to school every morning, stand in the sun, and wait till she's inside before she leaves. If that's not responsibility, what word does your rich world have that's better? The schoolgirl's shy but brave. She lent us pens when we forgot. She even taught us to write pretty." Little laughs rippled, cutting the heaviness. Richard's eyes flashed irritation. These trifles don't compare with the legacy she's throwing away. Adam stepped fully onto the porch, voice hardening. "It's the small things that keep a family. A child needs love more than shares. Our greatest legacy is Emma's laughter, not a bank balance." Emma edged down a step, still hugging her giant fair bear. She tilted her clear eyes up to Richard. "You call someplace home, but home isn't the big gate. Home is where you don't feel alone. Here, Sister Rachel isn't alone anymore." Silence rolled over the porch. Heads nodded. A few neighbors dabbed at their eyes. The child's simple pledge sounded like a proclamation. Richard stood rigid, shoulders tight. Something flickered soft, lost, then disappeared under old steel. "You don't understand," he said, voice dropping. "This world won't forgive weakness." Rachel took a step up, fingers circling the red bracelet, eyes wet and bright. "No, Dad. The world won't forgive a lie. And I am done living one." The porch air thickened. It seemed all of Willow Street held its breath. Richard clenched the leather case, his face shadowed in the fading sun. His voice fell like a judge's gavel. "Enough. Rachel, this is your final chance. Come back. Keep the Morgan name, your future, everything that's yours. Or cut it off right here, right now. And from this second, you are not my daughter, not an heir, not a board member. You have nothing." The murmurs rose again, heavier. Mrs. Quinn panted. Mr. Hale shook his head. Hands flew to mouths. Emma gripped Rachel with both hands, eyes brimming. You're not going anywhere, right? I'm scared. Scared he'll take you." Rachel folded Emma close, her whole body shaking. Then she lifted her head to her father. Her eyes were red, but they shone like two small stars trying to hold back the dark. "You always talk about the future." She said each word trembling and clear. "But what future is it if I live in a big house with a hollow heart? You gave me money, status, recognition, but you never gave me a home. I found one here where I can make breakfast, hear a child laugh, and know I'm not measured by a stock price." Richard hissed, anger flashing. "You have no idea the cost of this choice. Love won't shield you from the tabloids, won't keep enemies from tearing you apart. When the scandal breaks, they'll call you the fallen Morgan heiress. Can you stand it?" Rachel stepped closer, almost toe to toe on the porch. "I can, Dad. Because what I can't stand is that silent mansion where even my tears made no sound. Here someone listens, and Dad..." Her tears spilled, but her voice didn't crack. "Home isn't a mansion, it's love." Willow Street went still as stone. Emma burst into sobs and clung to Rachel. In the doorway, the hardness in Adam's gaze softened and warmed like a spark catching. Richard staggered half a step, chest rising. His eyes found his daughter's, then dropped to the red cloth at her wrist, cheap but bound tighter than all he'd tried to give. He opened his mouth, and no words came. In the quiet, the wind through the maples sounded like the street itself exhaling. An engine fired, ripping the hush. Richard Morgan turned without another word. The car door slammed, the sedan rolled down the gravel, and dust lifted behind a row of stunned eyes. Rachel stayed frozen on the porch. Emma's arms locked around her waist, but Rachel's knees shook as if she were carrying something huge and invisible. When the car vanished, she buckled to the step. The mug she'd set down earlier slipped and broke clean in two. "Sis," Emma hiccuped, face wet. "You're not going anywhere, right? I was so scared. So scared he'd take you." Rachel wrapped the child and let herself cry. "No, I'm here. I promise. Even if I lose everything, I'm here." The words broke, but they held like a vow. Adam stepped out, his face grave, his eyes lit with feeling. He knelt beside them and drew them both into his arms. Rachel stiffened a second, then let herself lean into his shoulder. "You don't have to be strong alone anymore." Adam murmured, his warm baritone right at her ear. "Here you have us. A home that doesn't need a mansion or the name Morgan." She sobbed against him the first time she'd allowed herself to be weak. Around them, Willow Street quietly turned away. No more whispers. Mrs. Quinn wiped her eyes. Mr. Hale shook his head and smiled under his breath. "The girl chose right," he said. Still wedged between the grown-ups, Emma glanced up, tears shining over a small, dawning smile. "Then, our house is bigger now. I have Daddy. I have Sister Rachel. I have a family." Adam looked down and met Rachel's gaze through the blur. For the first time, he didn't hold himself back. He tightened his hand over hers, saying, without needing to say it, "You're not alone anymore." On a willow night, the porch light glowed weak and warm enough to show 3 figures holding on to one another. Not a glittering mansion, not a crystal table, just an old creaking porch where home finally began. Chapter 7. A Child's Words. The little living room smelled of warm wood. A fabric-shaded lamp cast a faint gold over walls the color of time. After the showdown on the porch, the air felt short of breath. Rachel sat on the edge of the old sofa, hands cupping a cooled mug of tea, the red cloth bracelet on her wrist darkening in the half-light. Adam leaned in the doorway, silent as a shield, while Emma sat cross-legged on the rug, hugging the giant bear, this way, and that tears still falling. "You okay, kiddo?" Adam knelt and held out a handkerchief. Emma shook her head, sniffling. She turned to Rachel, eyes like 2 dewdrops about to break. "Sister Rachel, I'm scared. I'm scared I'll wake up tomorrow, and you'll be gone." Her words dropped into the room like a pebble striking a still pond. Rachel put the cup down and knelt to Emma's height. Her hand trembled as she wiped the child's cheeks, cool fingertips touching flushed skin. "I'm here," she said so softly it sounded like a prayer. "I promise." Emma didn't answer. She crawled forward and wrapped her arms around Rachel's neck, squeezing as if she could hold up the whole sky. "I need Rachel." 4 thin words, light as breath, yet heavy enough to press on all the lonely years inside the 3 of them. A small moment, and a heart pulled tight. Rachel closed her eyes and let her own frailty seep into the child's sobs against her shoulder. The delicate pride she'd worn in rich rooms, what she used to stand tall with, went soft. She wasn't a Morgan heiress who must be strong anymore. She was simply Sister Rachel to a trembling little girl. Adam watched them hold each other. His throat worked. Years of bracing as the pillar had taught him never to ask for help, never to show weakness. But "I need Rachel" cracked that shell. He understood. There were things he couldn't give his daughter alone, a calm born of a sister by her side arms that smelled faintly of tea, a promise voiced with a wavering honesty. "I need Rachel." Emma whispered again, smaller this time, as if the sentence would lose power if it drifted away. Rachel nodded and hugged her tighter. "And Rachel needs you." She smiled through tears, faint but bright. "We need each other. That's what a home is." Adam moved closer and draped a thin blanket over them both. He sat beside them, close enough for their warmth to touch. "Sleep here tonight," he said, voice low and kind. Daddy will sit by the door. No one's taking Rachel from this house." The clock struck another beat. Under the gentle lamp, fear ebbed like a tide. On the rug, a man set down his pride, a young woman let down her guard, and a child stopped shaking 3 breaths, settling into one rhythm. In that small room, a simple, innocent sentence named what no paper could define home. Night thinned slowly. The weak gold of the lamp mingled with the whisper of rain along the porch and the tick of the clock. Emma lay curled against Rachel, tiny hands still clutching her sweater, as if letting go would make her sister vanish. Adam sat opposite, eyes fixed on the sight. The light picked out Rachel's wet lashes and the faint tremor of her narrow shoulders as she soothed the child. In that minute, the walls Adam had built around his heart these years quietly split. Rachel bent and murmured into Emma's ear, "I promise you, tomorrow, no matter what the world says, I'll still be here. Because I need you too." Emma nodded with her eyes closed. Tears still purled on her cheeks, but her mouth softening into a relieved smile. "I believe you. Not because of more crying, but because of a child's clear trust. I believe you rang like absolution, an invisible embrace that unhooked the shackles of pride pressure and the cold walls of a glittering mansion." Rachel lifted her head and met Adam's eyes. He looked back steady, direct, as if words crowded his throat and couldn't quite pass. Finally, he let out a breath. "See," he said gently, "she doesn't need gold or a mansion. She just needs you." And the truth is, he cleared his throat, voice roughening, "So do I." Rachel froze, eyes wide. Another tide of tears came this time, not from fear, but from being seen, being needed. The room stayed old, the lamp still dim. But a child had said what the adults couldn't: "I need Rachel." From that single line, Adam finally named what his heart had long held. Night sank deeper. Rain ticked softly on the tin roof. The living room glowed in a warm halo. Emma, spent from crying, breathed in little snuffles. Rachel, back against the sofa, blinked heavy-lidded with fatigue. Adam kept his post across from them, silent, unwilling to look away. Drifting toward sleep, Emma stirred. Two small hands slid from the blanket, reaching. One found Rachel's wrist. The other brushed the calloused fingers of Adam. "Don't go," she whispered, eyes still closed. "I need both of you." Time seemed to halt. Rachel stilled her hand, tightening around the tiny one. Across from her, Adam didn't pull away. His larger palm folded in, letting Emma's little warmth tie the three of them with an invisible string. In that worn room, not a mansion, not a crystal-laden table, a child's small hand melted pride and drew two lonely hearts nearer. Rachel bent, and a tear fell onto the back of Emma's hand, but her lips were smiling. "I'm here. I promise." Adam nodded, his voice low like a vow. "And Daddy's here too. No one's going anywhere." The child slept, a hint of a smile on her mouth. The two grown-ups sat very still, hands still, linked hearts stumbling and bright. They didn't have to look at each other. Emma's joined hands had spoken for them. A family had been tied together, not by paperwork, but by love. By morning, the rain was gone. Pale sun slipped through the curtains and pooled in a room that still smelled faintly of last night's tea. Emma woke with wild hair and shining eyes, hurried to the old wooden table and pulled out the green notebook Rachel had tucked into her backpack long ago. At the sink, Rachel rinsed a glass and glanced over the night's tears, still echoing softly inside her. Adam sat on the porch, honing a wrench. Every so often, his gaze drifted inside, unwilling to stray too far from the two shapes within. Emma propped her chin and wrote carefully, tongue peeking with concentration. At last, she held up the page, eyes glowing as if she'd found treasure family. Rachel plus Daddy plus me. The paper tilted in the light. The letters were wobbly but hard won. Next to me, Emma had drawn a red heart and a grinning stuffed bear. Rachel froze, her hands still wet. She stepped closer and looked at the line. Her chest cinched. Everything she had ever wanted written as a simple equation by a small, steady hand. Hearing the squeal, Adam left his tools and came in. He took in the page and felt his chest tighten. He had thought family was a word broken in two when Amelia died. Now his daughter had written it whole again and added a name he hadn't expected: Rachel. Emma ran over and pressed the notebook into Rachel's hands. See, it's true. If I write it down, it won't disappear. You're my family now. Rachel gathered her close. Fresh tears fell, spotting the word family and making it bloom rather than blur. Adam, standing beside them, clenched a fist, then eased it open. He stepped forward and set his hand on Rachel's shoulder. "The kid's right," he said, voice husky. "This is a family." A child had written what adults didn't dare say, and in that instant, innocence toppled pride, leaving only one sturdy truth: love is the foundation of a home. That evening, the little lamp glowed again, shadows leaning long across the wall. Dinner was just vegetable soup and a few slices of bread, but the laughter was richer than any banquet in a grand house. After they cleared the table, Emma knelt on the rug, hands pressed together, eyes squeezed shut with solemn care. Rachel and Adam traded a surprised look. "What are you doing, kiddo?" Adam asked, curious and gentle. Emma cracked one eye, praying. "My teacher says we should thank what we love most each day. I want to do that." Rachel smiled, heart drawing tight. She sank down beside Emma and set a hand on her shoulder. Adam set his dish towel aside and sat across. Emma closed her eyes again. Her small voice rose in the quiet room. "Dear God, thank you that today I have Daddy. Thank you that I have Sister Rachel. Thank you that I'm not alone anymore. Please keep my new family together so I won't be scared." The last line trembled, but it rang. A hush fell deep and round as midnight. Rachel pressed a hand to her chest as tears broke free. Adam dipped his head. The iron in his eyes warmed, rimmed in red. Rachel pulled Emma in and whispered, voice unsteady, "Thank you for calling me family." Adam laid his work-scarred palm across his daughter's back, then lifted his gaze to Rachel. He didn't speak, but his eyes did. "Thank you for becoming something we can't do without." In that moment, there were no mansions or estates, no Morgan name or stock price, only a small room, a weak golden lamp, and 3 people folded into a child's prayer. A new family named by the purest faith there is, and the strongest. Chapter 8. The Battle. Within, night settled over the small house. On the old wooden table, dinnerware had given way to a stack of bills, electric water, after-school care, milk vouchers, paper mottled under a weak yellow lamp. Adam sat straight, a pencil pinched between work-toughened fingers, scratching and erasing numbers like he could shave a little weight off the burden on his back. At the corner of the table, a worn leather wallet lay open, a few loose bills showing. Rachel leaned against the kitchen counter, thumb rubbing the red cloth bracelet. She watched the patient strokes of Adam's pencil, heard the sigh he swallowed back down. On the stove, the soup cooled. Celery and peanut butter drifted into the papery air, warm and a little choking. "Let me," Rachel began, then stopped when his shoulders stiffened. He didn't look up. "You don't owe us. I'm not paying a debt." She stepped closer and set her hand on the table's edge. "I want to stay. And if I stay, we carry this together. Adam put the pencil down and lifted his gaze. His eyes darkened like a sky with no stars. Stay, how with your money? Rachel shook her head, voice soft but sure. With my heart. Money is only part of it. I want to shoulder things with work, with time, with everything I have. He let out a dry half laugh, brittle as old wood. Rachel, I'm a man. I live on my pride. I can't watch my child grow up on someone else's money, on the money of a... He swallowed. Someone who doesn't belong to this world. Rachel slid open a drawer and took out the page Emma had written yesterday. Family. Rachel, plus Daddy, plus me. She laid it on top of the bills. The lamp made family glow. If we're family, why split my money and your money? Why use pride to erase a heart that wants to stay? Adam stared at the page, throat tight. He pushed it aside, but his hand shook and barely touched it. I'm afraid your father will come back. I'm afraid the press will dig. I'm afraid my daughter will be called the kid, living off some rich woman's kindness. I'd rather go without than let Emma get hurt again. I'm afraid too, Rachel said, honest eyes glassy. But what I fear most is waking up tomorrow and not teaching Emma to write, not hearing these floorboards creak, not seeing you wrestle numbers I should be sharing. Adam, love doesn't make you smaller. It makes us bigger. He turned away, chest rising, as if he were fighting himself. The silence stretched. Then he pulled the tuition bill close and pushed half the stack across to her, split it. His voice came low and rough, firm, but trembling. Not because I'm weak, because I don't want you standing outside this house anymore. Rachel smiled through tears and set her hand on the half stack. In the middle of the table between pride and longing, their hands touched warm, real equal. The house still held the faint scent of cooled soup. The bills were divided, but the air was thick as smoke. Rachel drew a blank sheet and wrote carefully, then slid it to Adam. Fair share rules, she said, soft and steady. Adam frowned. Rules. What? On the page, 3 lines. Whoever earns contributes. Whoever's tired rests. The other carries more. We don't count money and love, only in sharing. Adam read, then sat quiet for a long time. The yellow light mapped the lines at his eyes, the fatigue carved by years of carrying. Sounds. More like a contract than a family. Rachel smiled faintly, eyes still wet. You're right. But this contract has no signatures, only hearts. It's a promise, not a shackle. He shook his head, voice catching. I'm afraid you'll think I'm taking advantage. You come from another world with so much we can't touch. I won't turn myself into a burden in your eyes. Rachel didn't answer right away. She rose, went to the kitchen, and returned with a small box. Inside lay a simple silver pendant with a scuffed blue stone. This isn't luxury. It's the keepsake my mother gave me before she died. I've kept it thinking. One day, I'd give it to the person who makes me feel at peace. Adam stared, gaze caught by the stone. Why? Me. Rachel sat, brown eyes bright in the dim, because only here, sitting beside a pile of bills, eating cooled soup, and hearing Emma laugh, do I feel at peace. If you call that a burden, then let me carry it with you. That's love, not pity. Adam slowly closed the box and slid it back to her. I'm not sure I deserve something like that. But if you truly want to stay, then your fair share promise I accept. Rachel laid her hand over his. No more words were needed. Outside, the maples stirred, as if whispering yes. On the table, the bill stopped being a symbol of pressure and became a sign of sharing a family learning to stand together. It was late. The clock knocked out 11 dry beats. The bills were stacked neatly again, and the lamp burned on lighting two quiet figures. Rachel leaned her chin into her hand-eyes on Adam. He sat back, fingers-laced gaze, heavy as stone. Silence held until he drew a long breath and let it go rough. Rachel, maybe you don't see it. I've thought if you knew everything you'd leave, not because of your father or money, but because I'm not enough. Rachel tilted her head. Not enough. For whom he chuckled dry, but his eyes shone. For you. For Emma. For a new family. I lost my wife. Lost my trust. Lost most of my pride. These days, even the bills keep me up. A man like that. How could he be worthy of you? Someone who could walk into any mansion, live among crystal and velvet. Rachel went still. In front of her wasn't a strong man. It was an uncovered heart, finally brave enough to show its wounds. Adam. She said his name like a reassurance. Do you know what I had in the mansion closets? Of clothes, jewelry, feasts, and never once a dinner where anyone looked at me with a true gaze. Here, when you fumble the bills, when you fall asleep holding Emma on the couch, when you smile because a pot of soup turned out, those are luxuries I never touched in my life. Adam bowed his head, fingers trembling on the table's edge. I'm afraid you'll regret this. Rachel reached over and covered his hand. Warmth moved across. I'll only regret missing this love. You may have lost many things, but you never lost your dignity. That's why I'm staying. He lifted his eyes rimmed in red. For the first time, she saw no guard there. Only a broken man, aching to believe he was still enough to love and be loved. In the small room, with bills and yellow light, a confession that looked like weakness became strength. Because when Adam said, I'm not enough, Rachel finally could whisper the truth she'd buried. You're everything. Wind hissed softly along the window frame. They still sat by the bills, words echoing in the air. Neither of them saw the wide eyes peeking down from the narrow stair to the attic. Emma hugged her bare, barefooted hair, wild sleep still clinging to her face. A dream had woken her. The murmurs had led her out. Daddy? The little voice was thin, but enough to startle them both. I heard. Adam stood too quickly. Emma, it's late. You should... She shook her head and climbed down, eyes shining. Daddy said not enough, but to me, Daddy is the most enough. Without Daddy, I have nothing. The words struck the deepest place in him. He froze, mouth working without sound. Emma turned to Rachel, voice trembling and firm. And I need Sister Rachel too, because you make me laugh and make me feel I'm worth something. If you go, I have nothing either. Rachel reeled, tears spilled before she could stop them. She opened her arms, and Emma dove in, clutching like the world might pull her away. We only need Daddy and Sister Rachel, Emma whispered, eyes shut tight. That's enough. The innocent words unlocked every adult wall. Adam knelt and wrapped both his daughter and Rachel in his arms. No one hid their tears. No one kept any distance. Inside that crowded, warm hold, the battles over pride and fear and the past dissolved. A single truth remained. A child needed them, and they needed each other. Dawn pooled through the small window, laying soft stripes on the mottled wall. The living room was still cluttered with bills, a pencil, and the Fair Share Rules page on the table. But the air felt different, lighter, like the storm had finally emptied. Emma perched on a wooden chair, the giant bear hogging half the space. She spooned porridge, but her eyes watched the two adults waiting for an answer. Rachel stood at the little stove, hair mussed eyes newly bright. Adam sat at the table back straight, fingers laced. At last, Adam spoke low and certain. "Emma, last night Daddy said something that wasn't true. Daddy isn't not enough. But I let fear hide the truth. You need Daddy, and you need Rachel." Emma set down the spoon, eyes wide. Rachel turned slightly, her gaze unsteady. Adam went on. "If the two people you need most are Daddy and Rachel, then Daddy won't let pride hurt you anymore. I promise to keep both of you here." Rachel came over and sat beside them, her hands knotted on her knees. She looked at Emma, then at Adam. Tears shimmered, but her voice was firm. "I promise too. Not as a tenant, not as an outsider. As family. I'll stay for every meal, every bill, every laugh, and every time we cry." Emma leaned across the table and hugged them both, voice bubbling with joy. "Then, we're a family. I have Daddy, I have Sister Rachel, and I have my bear. I don't need anything else." Adam laughed through tears and drew them close. Rachel rested her head on his shoulder, breath-shaking smile finally whole. Outside, the sun climbed. In the small house, there were no crystal tables, no diamond rings. There was cooled porridge, a stack of bills, and 3 people holding fast to one another. And here, in the plainest place, the promise of a family was spoken truest. Chapter 9. A Father Changes. Late afternoon. Willow Street held its breath. The last light snagged on the clothesline, gilding a row of wooden clips. The Carter door sat ajar. Inside, spoons touched bowls, the sound as calm as a long exhale. Then came the engine, not its usual proud growl, just a tired hum winding down like something limping home after a storm. The black sedan stopped at the gate. The door opened. Richard Morgan stepped out. Tie loosened sleeves, rolled to the elbow. No entourage, no dark glasses, no aura of power, only a man with sleepless shadows under his eyes. He stood at the bottom step and looked up at the porch. Last time, he'd stood there like a judge. Today, he stood like a man who'd lost his way. His hand slipped off the briefcase handle. A faint tremor showed. "Rachel." He called, voice hoarse, no longer a command but a request for permission to enter. The door opened. Adam appeared first, broad-shouldered, alert, not hostile. Behind him, Rachel Hare hastily pinned the red cloth bracelet snug at her wrist. Emma peeked out, chalk dust still clinging to her lashes. Chicken soup drifted to the doorway, warm and gentle. Richard drew a breath. "Could I talk for a moment?" He looked at Adam. "With all of you." They invited him onto the porch. He sat on a paint-chipped wooden chair and set his case aside, fingers lacing together like a man searching for something to hold on to. Silence unfurled long enough to measure all the years they'd missed. "I've read every article," he began, eyes on the grain of the boards. "I've barked at lawyers hung up on 2 board members. I thought I was protecting my daughter. Turns out, he lifted his gaze to Rachel. I was only protecting the shadow of myself." Rachel pressed her lips together. "Dad, let me finish." His voice softened, conceding. "I ran into someone today, your old elementary teacher. She said, 'Your daughter's penmanship was beautiful,' until she got afraid of being wrong. He stopped to swallow. "I made you afraid of being wrong for too long." Emma edged forward and held up a pencil. "Can I draw you a—" "No fear." Star Richard blinked, then offered the back of his hand. A small, shaky star bloomed there, crooked and bright. Emma blew on it. Now grown-ups get less scared. A weary, unguarded smile tugged at Richard's mouth, one not meant for cameras. He turned to Adam. "I don't know the proper way to apologize, but there are things I can do right." He took a thin packet from his case, not contracts, just color-printed pages. Scholarship programs, and good private schools nearby, not to flaunt money. To give Emma options if your family thinks they fit. I'll sponsor quietly. No press, no debts owed. Just so she learns, without flinching at the bills. Adam stilled. Pride rose to shove the offer away. Then he caught the light sparking in his daughter's eyes, the same light he'd seen the day she found a new box of pencils, and he paused. Rachel looked at her father, tears catching. "You're accepting this, accepting us." Richard nodded, slow, unmistakable. "I can't choose where you call home, but I can learn to stand outside this porch without breaking it. Stay, Rachel. Stay where you smile. I'll tell the board. My daughter is doing what's right. Stocks will rise and fall. If I keep losing my child, every chart line is worthless." A breeze threaded through. The clothesline ticked like a tiny round of applause. Adam set the pages on the table and met Richard's eyes. "If you're doing this for the headlines, I'll refuse. If you're doing it for Emma, and for your daughter, we're grateful." "For Emma," Richard said. He turned to the child. "Pick the school you like. I'll handle the rest. As your grandfather." He paused, startled by his own word. "If you'll let me call myself that." Emma's eyes went wide. She bobbed her head so fast her hair blew like a dandelion. She took Richard's hand and kissed the chalk star. "I let you." And on that evening porch, power bowed not to defeat, but to something larger, a child's clear voice, and a love warm enough to guide a man who'd wandered too far. Night had settled. The living room's lamp spilled gold onto the porch, outlining two figures facing each other. Rachel and Emma had gone inside to set the table. Only Adam and Richard remained the yard quiet but for crickets keeping time. Arms folded, Adam's gaze was steady, his voice even. "Mr. Morgan, I don't know what to call you now. A father or a businessman negotiating terms." Richard snorted softly and shook his head eyes on the maples. "Today, I don't want to be a CEO or a billionaire. I just want to be a man who's gotten too many things wrong with his daughter." A brief silence. Adam exhaled, then spoke. "I thought you'd never change. You have power money. But with Emma and Rachel, I won't allow anyone to drop in, interfere, and walk away." Richard turned, meeting him head on. "You're afraid I'll take her back from you. I'm afraid you'll hurt Rachel one more time," Adam answered without flinching. "She just learned how to breathe. If you press that cold world down on her again, she'll suffocate." Richard's eyes lowered. He nodded like a man hearing a sentence he deserved. "I won't deny it. But this time, I'm not here to take. I'm here to stay near. I promise not to meddle with her life. As for Emma," he swallowed, "I want to do my part. If she'll have me as a grandfather, I'll see to her schooling, to the things that might be tough for the two of you." Adam wavered. Pride shouted no, but the memory of family. "Rachel, fun's daddy." Me murmured yes. He let his shoulders drop. His voice thickened. "As long as it comes from love, not pity. I don't need a billionaire in my house. I need a grandpa who can sit and eat a simple dinner with his granddaughter." Richard's smile this time was real. "You're right. It's time I learned to sit on a wooden porch instead of a leather chair." Two men from different worlds sat there a long moment. No enmity now, only a quiet chord between them, respect for a woman and a child. Under the porch light, Richard offered his hand. Adam hesitated, then took it. The shake wasn't long or strong, but it was enough to set a promise. Don't interfere. Be present. Dinner wasn't fancy, just a pot of chicken soup, a few slices of toast, a small salad Rachel had thrown together. The little room glowed under the weak lamp. A frayed, checkered cloth covered the old table. One thing was new. The wooden chair at the head of the table wasn't empty. Richard sat there so unsure he didn't know where to put his hands. The suit jacket was gone. His white shirt was faintly wrinkled from a hard day. In front of him, a chipped porcelain bowl steamed ginger scallion chicken. Emma sat beside him, bare tucked under her arm, eyes wide, like she was watching a miracle. She held her spoon, then looked steadily at him. "Grandpa, please eat." The room paused. Adam cleared his throat. Rachel held her breath. Something struck Richard like a word he'd never dared hope to hear. He lifted his head slowly, old eyes brimming. "What? Did you call me Emma?" Tipped her head and grinned. "Grandpa, I have Daddy, I have Sister Rachel, and now I have a grandpa. My family's complete." With that one simple title, a child undid every piece of armor a proud man had worn. Richard bowed his head. His hand trembled around the spoon. He lifted a sip. Steam rose and stung his eyes. The savory sweetness tasted like the first real meal of his life. Rachel watched her father, tears slipping unchecked. Across the table, Adam stayed wary, yet softened as Emma held her grandfather's hand like treasure. "Thank you for having me," Richard said softly, voice breaking. "This is the best dinner I've ever had." Emma giggled and ladled more soup. "Eat lots so you have energy to play with me. Tomorrow, I'll teach you how to color a rainbow." Adam and Rachel traded a look over the table, smiling teary. In that moment, there was no icy CEO, no border between rich and poor, only a small family circled around chicken soup and a father learning to bow to the value of love. After dinner, dishes stacked in the sink, the aroma of soup lingering like a warm blanket. Emma, worn out, dozed on the sofa, bear clutched tight. Adam carried her upstairs, leaving a quiet pocket where Rachel and Richard faced each other. The weak lamp threw their shadows long. Richard sat on the wooden chair, fingers interlaced, eyes down like a man summoning courage. Rachel stood by the doorway, hand on the red bracelet, heart racing. At length he spoke. "I used to think you leaving was betrayal. I used the press, the stock price, the estate, everything to force you back. But truly, I was hiding a fear that one day I would lose you for good." Rachel trembled, vision blurring. "You made me feel never enough." I smiled, threw parties, wore the dresses you chose, shook the hands you arranged, and never once got to be Rachel. He lifted his head. His eyes were wet, the shoulders that had carried so much now dipping low. He nodded slowly, voice breaking. "I'm sorry." Two words that had never existed in this man's dictionary fell like a crack of lightning across the porch. Rachel reeled, lips shaking. She stepped forward, then another step, until she stood right in front of him. "Did you just say you're sorry?" she asked, as if to make sure she hadn't misheard. He nodded, tears spilling. "I'm sorry. I taught you to fear mistakes, to fear living, to fear love. I'm sorry I forgot you were my daughter. before you were an heir. Rachel broke, no longer holding back. She knelt and wrapped her arms around him. For the first time in her life, his embrace wasn't cold with power. It trembled strong and real, like a father's. "Daddy," she whispered, choked and relieved. "This is what I needed. Not a mansion, not shares, just this apology." In the little room, under the flicker of a gold lamp, a wealthy father finally bowed to the simplest truth love. Morning came damp with mist. Pale sun threaded the maples and glittered on tiny puddles by the curb. At the Carter door, Rachel tied Emma's hair. Adam adjusted the strap of her backpack. Peaceful, ordinary like any other day. One thing was new. Richard Morgan stood on the porch. No fine suit, just a plain gray sweater. He waited with the awkwardness of someone unused to the rhythm of an ordinary morning. Emma bounced out bare under her arm, eyes bright. "Grandpa, will you walk with me today?" Richard hesitated, glanced at Rachel, then at Adam. They said nothing, only nodded. He bent, hand-extended fingers shaking. Emma didn't hesitate. Her little fingers slipped into his and curled tight. The hand that had signed billion-dollar deals gripped power that made a market flinch, now trembled beneath a child's simple hold. Richard bowed his head and whispered, "Let's go, my granddaughter." The small street went quiet for a beat. Rachel covered her mouth as tears rose. Beside her, Adam stood straight tension, easing into a softness she'd never seen. No explanations were needed, the picture said. Enough true power isn't money. It's holding the hand that needs you. Emma whistled a little tune and skipped. Richard matched her pace slowly, learning her rhythm. Each step seemed to rinse away a little pride, leaving only a grandfather practicing love. Rachel whispered to Adam, voice thin with feeling, "He really has changed." Adam answered softly, eyes following them. "Maybe." Emma taught him how. Sunlight spooled down the lane where 3 generations, one grandfather, one grandchild, and 2 quiet hearts watching were rewriting what family means. Chapter 10. The Family Table. The small table wore a checkered cloth. The soup in the bowls sent up wisps of steam like warm little breaths. The soft gold ceiling light fell across the scarred wood, drawing rings of brightness that overlapped and glowed. At the window, Richard stood still, fingertips on the wooden frame, eyes on the line of maples slipping into dusk. The sky reflected back in his gaze like a lake finally gone calm. Behind him, the clink of spoons against rims, Emma's bubbling laughter, and the buttery smell of toast. Rachel set 3 clear glasses on the table, only water. No sparkle of champagne, just a ripple of coolness trembling under the light like tiny moons. Adam pulled out her chair. His hand paused a heartbeat at the backrest, as if he could hold this moment there a little longer. "Grandpa, come sit." Emma chimed her voice, bright as a bell. Richard turned, fatigue still softening the corners of his eyes, but a quiet smile already there. He took the empty chair beside Emma, and all the sounds in the room seemed to gather. At one point, the heartbeat of a house. Rachel looked up, letting her gaze rest on each face, Adam steady, Emma radiant. Richard gentled in a new and unfamiliar way. She lifted her glass and drew a breath. "Tonight, let's toast." Adam raised an eyebrow, half teasing, half sincere. "With water? With love?" Rachel said, her eyes rimmed with a tender red. Emma copied the grown-up solemn as a keeper of ancient rites. "To Daddy's sister, Rachel, and Grandpa. To family." The hush of crystal was small and clear, ting like a star tapping at the evening. Right then, the moon of the moment lowered, In the window's reflection, Richard saw their three silhouettes lean together and merge into one. He touched his glass to theirs, his throat tightening. To home. He managed hoarse, like a man relearning his alphabet. Emma turned and clinked Rachel's glass again. To real riches. Rachel blinked. Real riches? Emma nodded, baby teeth flashing. It's when you have people who eat with you every day. No one sobbed, but Adam's eyes grew bright. Richard's head dipped for a slow second, and Rachel pressed the rim of her glass to her forehead as if sealing a vow. Yes, she whispered. Real riches are love. They ate in an easy hush, the conversation carried along by Emma's story about tomorrow's drawing, by Richard's shy attempts at jokes that left him blushing, and by the warm looks Adam kept sending Rachel's way. When she fumbled her spoon, the small human crumbs of life someone once would have traded a lifetime to taste for a single evening. Outside, the breeze rang the clothesline. Inside, the three water glasses sat half empty, the light still warm. The meal didn't have much yet. Everywhere you reached, there was enough. And as the laughter flickered like a small fire, no one remembered mansions or shares. They remembered that soft ting that had crystallized a truth. Real wealth from start to finish is simply love that sits down together. After dinner, silver chimed in the little kitchen, but this time it wasn't Rachel or Adam at the sink. Richard stood there, sleeves rolled to the elbow. Water threaded from the tap. Soap foamed over hands more used to signing billion-dollar contracts. Rachel stopped in the doorway, startled. Dad, let me. Without turning, Richard answered softly, You've done enough. Let me learn how to live honestly. Adam leaned to the doorframe, arms folded, a crooked smile fighting through eyes gone misty. Mr. Morgan, doing dishes. The press wouldn't believe it. Richard chuckled low, rough. Thankfully, there are no cameras here. Only family. At the table, Emma hugged her bear and scribbled on a sheet of paper. She began to read aloud, sing-song, and proud family rules. Whoever cooks doesn't wash the dishes. Whoever's tired can rest. The other covers. No one gets left alone. That last line hushed the room. Rachel pressed a hand to her chest, eyes shining. Adam glanced at Richard, and for a beat, the two men's eyes met no wealth or want. Between them only a quiet agreement. Richard set the last bowl to dry and turned, wiping his hands on a worn dish towel. I forgot too long what family means. It means sharing. Thank you for giving me a chance. Rachel stepped closer. For the first time, Dad wasn't a distance but a nearness. She murmured, This chance. No one can take it back. Adam slipped his hand over Rachel's and gave it a small, steady squeeze. In the window's reflection behind them, Richard caught the gesture. Rather than bristle, he smiled the kind of smile that says, I see it and I accept it. Under the kitchen's warm light, a once cold CEO washed dishes for the first time, and in that ordinary act, he laid down a true foundation for a home built out of love. The living room glowed after the meal. Soap and old wood mingled in the air. The yellow lamp lit a blotched wall, where once only a curled calendar and a few reminder scraps hung. Emma dragged a chair to the middle, climbed up with a big blank sheet. I want us to write our dreams and stick them on the wall. She passed around colored markers, eyes sparkling. Rachel smiled through the last of her tears and wrote first careful even strokes. Dream. A home where everyone gets to be themselves. Adam took a marker, hesitated, then printed in a blunt, honest hand, "Dream that Emma grows up knowing she's enough no matter what the world says." Emma, delighted, scribbled in purple, "Dream always eat together with Daddy, sister, Rachel, and Grandpa." All eyes turned to Richard. He held the marker a long time. Those hands that once signed papers, that tugged at whole markets, now unsteady. He wrote slowly, then set the pen down. The line read, "Dream. Learn how to be a father again." No one held it back. Rachel cried out and hugged him from behind. Adam turned aside, fist curling on his knee to keep his own feelings steady. Emma clapped, then taped the little pages around the big one until the wall bloomed with color. A child had taught the house to write down what matters, and for the first time, a once frigid billionaire named the simplest dream of all to be a father. Richard stared at the wall, his eyes brighter than the lamp. "Thank you for giving me another dream." Rachel squeezed his hand, voice thick. "You always had it. Today, you just wrote it down." That stained old wall became the loveliest one, not because of fresh paint, but because it carried a family's shared dreams. Night drew late. The lamp's glow spilled onto the porch, washing the new dream wall in warm gold. The little house rested only the wind moving through the maples. Richard sat alone on the wooden chair, no longer a chilled executive, only a graying father with heavy hands folded on his knees. He studied his own line dream, learn how to be a father again. Tears slipped quiet down his nose. In a voice that trembled like a child relearning how to tell the truth, he whispered, "Real wealth is love." On the stairs, Rachel covered her mouth and stood very still. Adam stepped behind her, a hand on her shoulder, lending that quiet kind of strength. They said nothing, just watched the proud man they'd known bend to the simplest thing. Richard repeated clearer now, as if carving it into himself. Not stocks, not mansions. Real wealth is having someone to sit and eat with you, hearing laughter in a small house. Rachel couldn't help it. She crossed the room and sat beside him, taking his hand. For the first time, it wasn't cold with power. It trembled alive. "You found it again," she said, voice breaking. "Don't ever forget." Adam stood behind them, eyes damp, knowing some wounds only love can stitch. Outside, a few stars salted the sky. Inside, a warm lamp and low whispers were enough to light 3 generations, a family learning how to love from the beginning. Morning poured into the house. The scent of pancakes Rachel had just flipped mingled with Adam's coffee. Emma dashed circles around the table, hair wild, the teddy bear tumbling along the floor. It felt almost impossible that tears had been here last night. Richard sat down to a simple glass of water. No champagne flute, no crystal spread, just an old wooden table, hot plates and faces looking back at him with gentle expectation. Emma climbed onto her chair and lifted her little glass. "I want to toast again." Rachel laughed and slid hers close. Adam raised his eyes soft. Richard looked at the 3 across from him, his daughter, the man who had stood up for her, and the child who'd named him Grandpa. Something opened in his chest, filling all the dusted-over places. He steadied the glass, lifted it, and said, "To love." Plain words, but the distillation of the whole journey. The tiniest ting rang when 4 glasses touched. Sunlight spilled through the window and struck the water until it gleamed like crystal. But what made them rich wasn't crystal. It was the smiles lighting every face. Emma's clear little voice, "Real wealth." his family. Rachel's tears rose. Under the table, Adam gave her hand a quiet squeeze. Richard bowed his head, smiling, tired but at peace. He was no longer a cold billionaire. He was a father, a grandfather, and a piece of this home. Outside Willow Street kept its busy rhythm. Inside, a plain breakfast had become a true family meal, where wealth and power and pride all bowed to the only value that counts: love. The clink of spoons lingered, and Emma's laughter bounced off old wooden walls. The lamp threw a warm curve over 3 generations each, once lost now, sitting together inside a circle called home. Rachel tilted her head, whispering as if to herself, but loud enough for the table to hear. Maybe forever starts with moments like this. They all went quiet for 1 second. Then they laughed together and cried together, because they knew riches aren't measured in shares or houses. They're here in this room, in the way they look at one another, in the kind of presence no one dares to abandon anymore. Wealth doesn't define us. Only love and showing up builds a home. Listener, have you ever found your true family in an unexpected place? Tell us in the comments. If this story touched you, comment, "Family is home," and subscribe for the next healing chapter. Carry this feeling into your sleep. Sometimes, happiness doesn't begin with grand gestures. Just a simple meal, a hand held tight, and a whisper, "Maybe forever can start right now."